when I have content creators who are reaching out to me from the get-go and they're really trying to set themselves up for success from day one, those are really the clients that I see flourish because they are actually investing in themselves and investing in potentially not running into these issues down the line that I see with other content creators who don't involve legal from the start.
So what are some of those pitfalls or issues that you're seeing from a content creator perspective?
Everything from people just kind of working off a smile and a handshake kind of thing, like not even having anything in writing. That's huge mistake. And then, even people who are just going online and searching forms or using ChatGPT to create forms for them. These are forms that are just so standardized and they're not tailored in any way, shape, or form. They don't have a good portion of the legal protections that I like to see content creators have.
Hello. Welcome to another episode of Adeptus On-Air. I am again your host, Mike Hoffman, and today I am joined by entertainment attorney Jessica Pascale. Jessica, how are you today?
Good, thanks. How are you, Mike?
Good. So, lawyers generally scare me, but the good news is when they're entertainment related to me, they're at least a little more fun. So I'm looking forward to talking to you today, and I probably won't get myself in too much trouble. So that's a good thing.
Of course. And I mean, trust me, we're not as scary as you might think.
Okay. Well, for those of you watching, you can see Jessica does not look the least bit scary. So I do appreciate you coming on. I think, we have a lot of entertainment clients. So a lot of the people we've had on the podcast are in the entertainment field. And, we talk about a lot of things like the business components of entertainment. And we talk about, obviously, the path that people took to become a creative, later in life and so forth. But the one thing we really don't talk about is the legal side of it and the protections that they need, and so forth. Now, I know there's so many different areas of entertainment. I know you work with many of them, whether it be the production side or dealing with the creatives, and so forth. So I kind of want to start with the creative side, for example. And I know there's so many different aspects. There's actors, actresses, there's musicians, there's, artists, and things like that. What areas is your primary focus, or are you really across the board with creatives?
I'm pretty across the board. I haven't dealt with musicians a lot just because, I haven't dealt with them on the audio and recording side, I should say. Anytime musicians kind of cross over into television or film, I've worked with them in that respect. But anybody that's pretty much in any kind of TV, film, I mean, even online content creators. And that's everything across the board from, the talent that you see on screen to everyone all the way below the line, assistant directors, production designers, costume designers, even the people who do casting, anything like that. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because you mentioned online creators. Now, let's start there because we have a lot of clients that are in that space, and I deal with a lot of content creators, and it's relatively new. So, as I always tell them from a business perspective and from an accounting perspective, there's not a lot of case law on certain positions when you're dealing with creators because they haven't been around where there's been court cases and precedent and so forth. How are you finding dealing with these people that are really not necessarily, some of them are not necessarily really have a history of entertainment or a background in it, but for whatever reason, whether it's a fluke post that went viral or just, doing something online, suddenly became an entertainer?
So, I mean, honestly, I love working with these types of people because they are the people who have, they're new to the business. They need help. They need direction. They need guidance. And actually, I do see a lot of pitfalls with people like this as well, because a lot of them don't seek legal advice from the start. They'll only seek legal advice when and if they run into an issue. And at that point, it becomes much more complicated. Whereas when I have content creators who are reaching out to me from the get-go and they're really trying to set themselves up for success from day one, those are really the clients that I see flourish because they are actually investing in themselves and investing in potentially not running into these issues down the line that I see with other content creators who don't involve legal from the start.
So what are some of those pitfalls or issues that you're seeing from a content creator perspective that are frequent in occurring?
Oh God, I mean, so much. Everything from people just kind of working off a smile and a handshake kind of thing, like
Yeah.
not even having anything in writing. I've seen that.
Right.
That's huge mistake. And then, even people who are just going online and searching forms or using Chat GPT to create forms for them.
Yeah.
I mean, these are forms that are just so standardized and they're
Yeah.
not tailored in any way, shape, or form. They don't have a good portion of the legal protections that I like to see content creators have.
Mhm.
And I mean, even the biggest thing that I see is there's sometimes no discussion of rights. Who holds the rights, whether the rights are being licensed, whether the rights are a work for hire, who's contributing what to, sometimes there's multiple creators. And then if you don't have this in writing, technically each creator owns their own piece
Right.
of the project.
Yeah.
And so it gets messy in that sense when there's no agreement specifying who owns what, how things are divided, and that's where a lot of the issues can come up.
If you take TikTok, for example, I'm sure you have a lot of people on the TikTok platform. Once you join their creator program, which you don't even need a lot of followers to get into that program, once you get in that, obviously, as you're posting, you're seeing a lot of brands in the comment section. Hey, love to work with you. Let me send you this. Let me send you that. Are there any implicit agreements when a company says, let me send you some of my stuff, and then you, in return, post another video saying, hey, look what this jewelry company sent me?
Yes, I mean there's always implicit agreements. I mean, one of the best examples that I always use for implied in fact contracts. So if you go to a store and let's say you order a sandwich,
Mhm.
that is an implied in fact contract because you are saying to the person who is now preparing your sandwich, I intend to pay for this sandwich. That is why I am ordering it.
Right.
So, yes, it absolutely creates these implied in fact contracts. And that's why I was saying sometimes I see these deals where there's nothing in writing.
Right.
And, the brand is going to have certain expectations. And, even if it's not in writing, and if you're not necessarily representing their product the way they want you to represent it, they might not be happy with that. And then it may cost you future deals down the line, too. People talk.
Right.
So,
Right. So there's two things there, which you made a good point. So the what's the word I'm looking for? The not the direct consequence, the indirect consequences. You get a bad reputation for basically getting free stuff and saying thank you, haha. But are there any legal consequences of someone sending you something with no promise to post it, and you just take it, and one of two things happens: you take it and you don't post about it, and you just use it. You give it to your friend, or you don't like it and you give it a negative review.
So, I mean, as far as if you don't post it, there isn't really much legal ramification there if there was no expectations laid
Right.
out front. I mean,
Yeah.
me personally, I've even been sent product before just in like the hopes that I might plug it on like something that I'm doing at some
Sure.
point in time.
Yeah.
And so there's no legal obligation in that sense. If you give it a negative review, once again, are you going to run into legal trouble over it? If it's an honest opinion and it is fact, and you're not necessarily saying untrue things about the
Yeah.
product, if you're not, defaming the company, if you're not, if you're just simply saying, hey, I used this thing and here's my honest review of it.
I got a blister from this shoe they sent me. I got 3 blisters in an hour.
Exactly. That's, there's really not much from a legal perspective
Mhm.
that company can come after you for. Now, of course, like I said, if you're saying things that are completely untrue,
Sure.
if you're going into a realm of, saying really like bashing a company because
Right.
you don't like the CEO, for example,
Yeah. Yeah.
or, that could definitely run you into some legal trouble.
Yeah. So, at what point in time, generally through these relationships, when I say relationship loosely, a company sees me posting a TikTok, reaches out to me, hey, we'd love to send you stuff. They send it. I post a very positive, hey, thanks so much. Oh my God, these shoes look great on me. They're so comfortable. I walk for miles, blah, blah, blah. What happens at that point in time? And if you are a content creator, at what point in time do you recommend getting someone like you involved? Is it if the company comes back and asks you to do it again? Is it if they're asking for more specific things for you to do? Like when would you think the best time for you to get involved in the process is?
For me, I would say when you're being presented with a contract is the best time to bring someone like me in. If there's with the caveat of, if you're trying to create something yourself, and
Mhm.
like I said, you're trying to really get into this space of you want to be taken seriously.
Mhm.
Um, and, if you're working with other collaborators and you want to start defining rights and stuff like that, I would say bring me in at that early
Yeah.
phase too, because I can help put those contracts in place. But for sure, if you're just working with brands, the minute a brand or even an agency, because sometimes a lot of influencers get approached by agencies,
Yeah.
anytime a contract is presented, 100% you should have a lawyer look it over.
If you're represented by an agency, and for getting the contract with the agency, sure, I agree. You should look, if I'm going to sign with an agency, you should look over my contract with the agency. Now the agency is going to be securing brand deals for me. Is their legal representation enough protection for me as a content creator? Or if they present a contract, am I okay to say, all right, I trust you, or I need to have my own outside counsel look at that?
It really depends on the agency. So, I mean, this is me like kind of undercutting my work a little bit here,
Yeah.
but so I worked for two of the top talent agencies in the world throughout the course of my career. And our business and legal affairs team, in my opinion, was fantastic. And I
Mm-hmm.
think we were some of like the best kept secrets in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of these smaller agencies, they're not going to have an attorney on staff. Or even if they
Right.
do, if it's only like one attorney, that attorney is going to be really overtaxed
Yeah.
and really not reviewing every single contract in fine detail.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, even with, when I was working at these talent agencies, most of our clients had outside representation.
Right.
And it's just because if we had handled every single contract that came through for every single person that was a client of that talent agency,
Yeah.
we would have never been able to keep up with the work.
Yeah.
And not only that, but most outside counsel, and it's not to say that in-house counsel isn't aggressive and doesn't do a great job,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, they're more there to protect the interests of the agency in
Sure.
and of itself.
Yeah.
Whereas a counsel like me that is now on my own and with my own firm, I am protecting you and only you.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So for these influencers, I hate that word, but for content creators or influencers and things like that, is there a general like legal strategy? I mean, I know everyone's different, but there's like a kind of strategy, when they're new to this that you kind of discuss with them about. 'Cause, I mean, I know you're legal, but I'm sure since you've seen so much of it, I'm sure you're also giving general advice to an extent about how to navigate things, both from legal and non-legal. What are some of those things you discuss with them from the beginning?
Absolutely. So I actually deal with a lot of clients too. I provide general counsel work as well. And I always advise people that when they're getting started on this influencer or content creator path, as you call it, that they want to make sure they're separating personal from business
Mm-hmm.
finances.
Yes.
And I think it's so important too to start your own company, not only for tax purposes, but also, once again, to keep this divide between your business and your personal. And that's actually an area where I see a lot of people not doing that,
I could not agree
especially
with
not
you
from the
more.
get-go.
Yep. We see so many creators that we set up LLCs or S corps, depending on what their long-term plan is, because every contract they were getting was in their name, directly.
Yes, and that's something that I always, always, always encourage clients to do. And it's something that I do for clients as well. I will set up corporations for them. I will help them navigate the business side and the business aspect of being a content creator. And it's not just the legal side. And honestly, a lot of the advice that I give,
Mm-hmm.
I would say 7 out of 10 times tends to fall more in the business realm
Right.
than in the legal realm. Like I said, I always advise on stuff like, is this even a good look for you? Is this going to create issues for you down the line? Are you
Right.
going to get potentially bad PR out of this?
Right.
You have to think about these things. It's
Right.
not just legal.
There's a short-term impact and a long-term impact, especially for someone starting out. I got a potential $10,000 contract right here, but and I've seen it with certain things like certain content creators who want to enter like the OnlyFans, realm. And while that might be a profitable thing right now, to your point, what is the potential long-term impact, negatively potentially, of doing something like that?
Right. Does it build your brand? Is
Right.
this what you want your brand to be?
Correct.
If that's what you want your brand to be, by all means,
Sure.
go right ahead.
Yeah.
And, even like there are certain times where I see people just taking brand deals that are literally all over the place.
Mhm.
Fashion, beauty,
Yeah.
I mean, all sorts of crazy different things. And sometimes I have to be like, whoa, 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 let's hone down on it.
Right.
Do you want to be in one avenue? Do you want to be in one lane? Because if so, maybe you might want to start being a little bit more selective about which brand deals you actually consider and accept, as opposed to just taking anything and everything that comes your way. Because that's a temptation,
Yeah.
especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's hard to build a brand identity. It really is.
Sure.
But I have seen people do it successfully, and it's when they are willing to be more selective.
Yeah. Now, do some of these contracts basically control future deals for them? Meaning, I'm going to make a really extreme example. You're doing a brand deal for Nike, but it says in there you can't do anything for Adidas, Converse, or Puma. So, do some of the deals, I guess, two-part question, do some of them deals offer that? And what advice do you give them weighing out an opportunity now that potentially can cost you opportunities down the road?
So exclusivity is a very big thing in brand deals. I see it all the time. And most brands do want exclusivity. They want to know that if they are paying you, especially to
Mhm.
promote their product, you're not going to be promoting a competitor of
Of course.
theirs. Now, there are quite a few ways to kind of mitigate this, if you will. I mean, this is a huge, huge, huge pitfall I see for a lot of content creators because they don't necessarily understand the exclusivity clauses and they don't necessarily understand the length of time that they're asking for. So the exclusivity clause in and of itself isn't an issue. Like I
Mhm.
said, it's fairly standard. I expect most brands to ask for it
Yeah.
when it is a paid contract. What you really want to look out for is the length of time
Mhm.
and are you being adequately compensated for that length of time?
Right.
If they're only asking for like 1 month of exclusivity, that's not a huge ask, in my opinion.
Sure.
If they're asking for a year of exclusivity, that's a whole other story.
Right. You're taking potential income away for a 12-month period. They better pay you for that 12 months.
Exactly. So that's something that I always make sure that is in consideration. And quite frankly, I try to negotiate as much as possible. I
Yeah.
always want it to be as short of a period
Sure.
as
Yeah.
possible for my clients.
Sure. What are the legal requirements for someone who posts? You see it a lot on Instagram and maybe not on TikTok as much, but I just might not notice it in terms of when they have to identify that they are in a paid partnership. So two scenarios, you send to a content creator this sweatshirt and they love it and they just post, oh my God, I got the sweatshirt, I love it, as opposed to I'm now getting paid by this company to promote their sweatshirts.
So if it's free product, completely free product with absolutely zero requirements behind it, no, you don't have to say like sponsored or ad or any of the other legal requirements behind it. The
Mhm.
minute it's paid, even if you're being paid like $100,
Mhm.
the minute it becomes paid, yes, you absolutely have to disclose on all platforms that it is a sponsored ad or an ad or paid, the various legal disclosures that
Yeah,
you can, they pop up pretty readily in
sure.
your.
But payment means compensation, money. Payment doesn't mean free stuff.
Exactly. If it's just like I said, if it's product with zero requirement, like I said, now if it's product but there is a requirement,
Like you must
like
post three things. And I'll give you an example. I had a content creator. She was actually a TV actress. And Pottery Barn basically furnished a few rooms in the house. And in return, there had to be some posts. I believe it was two or three posts over a 3-week period or whatever. Something like that would require the Pottery Barn disclosure because even though there was no money, there was expectations in terms of what had to be done.
yes, exactly. The difference is whether there's an expectation between there being a post versus not. Like I said, if somebody just like sends you a product and is like, "Hey, I really hope you love this. If you love it, like,
Yeah, give us a
if
shout
you
out.
ever want to shout it out, that would be awesome," kind of
Yeah,
thing. That doesn't require, because in that instance, that is just you giving an opinion on a product. Yes,
sure.
you got it for free, but they're not sending it to you because there is an inherent obligation tied to it.
Right.
Whereas if, yeah, like the example you used where they furnished a few rooms in a home and they said you have to post,
Mhm.
then that you do need to disclose that that was sponsored at that point.
Now, what is the process of these videos that you're making getting approved? Because I imagine you get in a situation where, your Pottery Barn, the expectation of what I'm going to post or what I do post might not necessarily meet your expectations. Whether I made it too short, whether I made it too long, whether I didn't rave about it enough, whether I said I love it, but I also said, but I would have maybe like, that kind of thing. Do they go through a review process on the side of the company, or is it really a trust factor on what I'm going to post?
It depends on the company. Most reputable brands will have a review process, and
Okay.
it'll actually usually be spelled out in the contract. It'll say, like you'll be getting a brief, you'll be getting a script, things like that. And then they'll say, we expect to have your first edit done by X date.
Hmm.
And then, if we have notes, you have one, two, however many rounds to implement our notes
Hmm.
and kind of make it the way you want it. Now, within all of that, too, one of the things that I always like to negotiate for my clients is that they can never take away the client's brand, image, and voice. We never want it to be where this company is potentially making you to be somebody that you're
Yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah.
But yes, there's definitely, like I said, most reputable brands and companies will have some form of formal review. And I
Mhm.
mean, sometimes too, I'm even seeing brand deals like when they get to higher levels, sometimes the brands themselves are coming in and capturing the content and then just editing themselves.
Really? Okay, interesting. Yeah. So,
It's
so,
not necessarily the norm, but I have seen that.
so did you notice that, whatever it was 6 months ago, a year ago, both companies and creators panicking with all the talk and the 1 day suspension of TikTok?
Oh, 100%. That was a little bit of a crazy period. I'm not going
Yeah.
to lie. I mean, yes, people were all over the place with that. And it was, so many people wondering how it was going to impact
Yeah.
themselves as content creators, companies wondering how it was going to impact their ability to advertise as
Yeah.
brands and companies. So, yes, definitely witnessed that.
Are you seeing now not only promoting product, but now promoting ideas, political candidates, things like that, where, the idea of, oh, love this, I'll keep going back to love the sweatshirt, but now endorsing an organization, an intangible, an organization, a belief, a person, and a lot of the creators that we have on now that, you see on social media aren't basically promoting products. They're basically promoting themselves based upon political ideologies and stuff like that. Does it work any
So, as
different for them?
I was going to say, as far as content or contracts that have crossed my desk, I do still mainly deal with brand endorsements through
Mhm.
product. I have
Yeah.
seen a few that are more along the lines of nonprofits.
Yeah.
And I mean, those I've found really interesting. I've definitely seen people being approached by nonprofits to promote the nonprofit. I haven't really come across many people being approached by politicians per
Mhm.
se. Um, it is an interesting idea. I could definitely see that being the future of where this is going because,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, these people become celebrities in their own right and they do
Okay.
have audiences and their audiences listen to them. So,
Yeah. No, 100%. And I think what happens is, you know, they, I think they realize that they have this platform, and back to the brand deals. What I have several clients, I'm sure you've dealt with this before as well, is when they're now doing links to products. So Amazon storefronts, and things like that, where they're now, just on their own, they're just posting links, and they could be making, I have some clients making 6 figures a month just from an Amazon storefront.
yeah, no, affiliate marketing is huge. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge thing right now. And I mean, I've even worked with newsletters, for example, that have started monetizing their newsletters through affiliate marketing.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
yeah,
So,
no,
so
that's a huge area of interest for a lot of content creators, and and I mean, it's a pretty low bar for entry, quite frankly, too.
yeah.
Like a lot of them don't. You don't even have to show your face. You can kind of
Right.
just
Yeah.
post videos of products and say, hey,
Click here.
here's a link.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. That's really like, it's like money just working for you. You just really do nothing and that money comes popping in. Changing gears for a minute, child entertainers. So I think that's one area. And I know you do work with some child entertainers, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's a very interesting area because you have read over time, maybe not as much anymore, about the protections that they need. And sometimes it's from themselves, but sometimes it's from really close people to them, whether it be financial advisors, unfortunately, parents, siblings, and so forth. What is your approach to dealing with a child entertainer where you need to protect them, and some of the people that they think are protecting them are really who you're trying to protect them from? If I said
I
that right,
mean,
I think I
it's
did.
yes, no, it's tricky for sure because there are certain systems in place, if you will, like there are Coogan
Look at
accounts.
the counter.
Yeah, and so there are some systems in place for you know, performers who are minor. It gets really tricky though, because yes, you can write things into contracts with minors that protect brands, that protect companies. It's really hard to write legal protections in from, obviously they have to have parents who ratify these deals and who accept these deals on their behalf, or legal guardians, not
Right.
necessarily parents per
Yes.
se. But it gets really tricky because how much can you control the interpersonal relationship between a legal guardian and their child,
Right.
honestly.
Yeah.
you know it's you do what you can for your clients. Obviously you advise them as best as possible, but depending on the age of the client, especially if they're younger, if they're not in their teenage years, their legal guardian's going to be in every call, meeting,
Right.
everything with
Yeah.
them.
At what age? I know it's different for every situation because obviously I'm sure you've represented people where that alert's gone off in your head. Something's not right. But I'm sure there's others where it's the perfect parental situation. So, at what age do you feel, as a general guideline, you kind of have more direct access to the entertainer or the child themselves, where you guys can have a one-on-one conversation about, hey, this is about you, this is about protecting you, this is what we need to do.
I would say 12, 13, around there. I would say teenage years for sure. And there's even been certain, like, really well known cases, Alicia Silverstone, who got emancipated at 16.
Correct.
So there are even certain situations where really successful performers who are under the age of 18 can get themselves out from their legal guardians
Right.
and then, just basically represent themselves and go that route. But
So
yes,
do
I would say once they're starting to approach teenage years, it's more common to see the parents not as involved. But
yeah.
it just depends on the situation, honestly.
Now, what are some of the red flags that you would see in a situation to say, hey, you know, I'm not loving everything that's going on here. I need to, I don't say dig a little deeper. It's not necessarily your job to dig, but to protect your client, there are some things I don't like. I would imagine one of them would be potentially if the mom or dad become like their official manager and are taking their 20% as opposed to using someone in the industry or things like that. But what are some of the things that really, you know, catch your eye?
Yes, momager, dadager is 100%.
Yeah,
A big red flag for me too is if they're really the voice, if you will, and the performer themselves seems to have little to no voice. If I hear nothing from them, if they don't even seem like they're interested
yeah,
in
yeah,
what's happening, you can tell when a performer is genuinely excited about what they're doing and when a
yeah.
performer is kind of there because they have to be there, if you will.
Right.
So really it's when I'm starting to see a minor who seems like they're just not even wanting to be in the room,
Mhm.
not even wanting to be a part of the conversation. That's a big, big, big red flag for me.
And when you see that, your options, I imagine, are somewhat limited because if you see that, you still have that issue of the people that you're concerned about are still right there.
Right, exactly. And obviously I can try to be a voice of reason. I could try
Yeah,
to say, hey, Have you ever thought about taking a step back? Have you thought about, maybe not taking this project on, maybe taking a break, whatever, maybe focusing on something else, maybe go have a nice summer vacation, whatever
Right.
it is,
Go back to public school for, yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly. But to the extent that's ever taken, it's one of those things. It's funny that this kind of comes up, and not even just in this context. I am
Mhm.
always of the notion that my role here is to give advice, and then it is
Yeah,
completely up to my client whether to take it.
yeah. How do you feel that your experience on the other side before being an independent attorney, but working, for a talent agency? How do you feel that helped shape you to what you're doing now?
I mean, I loved it. It was a great experience, and I've worked all over the industry. So I've worked in house for production companies as well. I've worked at other law firms that represented both talent and production companies, and
Mhm.
it's just really nice because I've been able to work on both sides of the industry. I've been able to work on the company corporate side, so I know what is important from that respect, and then I've been able to work on the talent side as well, so I know what's important to talent.
Yeah,
And it's really nice to be able to have that experience so that, I can hopefully be the voice of reason
yeah,
in all these negotiations and say, hey, look, I get it. I've been on your side, but, now I'm on this side and I'm doing what's best for my client.
yeah. And so obviously, you're an attorney. You probably grew up at some point in your life saying, "I want to be an attorney when I grow up." At what point did that turn to entertainment?
So funny enough, no, I did not want to be a lawyer
Oh, really?
growing
Okay,
up.
there you go.
I mean, my path to this career was a little not traditional. I was apparently always very argumentative as a kid, and my parents always used to think that I'd make a great
Yeah,